During the interwar period and even the early stages of World War II, the concept of the multi-turreted tank was considered by many nations. Some were small, like the American M2A2 armed only with machine guns, while others were massive steel beasts like the T-35. Today, we will look at the German take on this style in the form of a large, three-turreted tank you likely know as the Neubaufahrzeug. Although development of the Neubaufahrzeug would not begin until October of 1932, its full history stretches back all the way to 1926 with a project which would become known as the Grosstraktor. For the full story of that, you should follow up this video by watching the previous episode of Cursed by Design where we discussed it in detail. From that failed project, lessons were learned and two of the three companies had proven themselves at least somewhat capable of designing a reasonably functional vehicle, with those being Krupp and Rheinmetall. Despite the issues their previous designs had dealt with, they showed enough promise to warrant further investment. As I already mentioned, this project would begin in October 1942 with new requirements for a tank with a weight of around 15 tons. Sticking with the same terminology as its predecessor, this was tentatively known as the Mittlerer Traktor, or medium tractor. As is typical with any tank project, this initial weight was quickly increased with the design approaching 18 tons. Due to the success of Rheinmetall's Grosstraktor design in early 1933, they were chosen to design both a hull and turret for this new tractor, although Krupp was also contracted to produce a turret of their own. As the designs developed, so did the name for the vehicle. Over the course of 1933, it would be known as the Grosstraktor Nachbau, which translates roughly to Grosstraktor Remake. Then the designation would change to Mittlerer Traktor Neubau, medium tractor new construction, and then Grosstraktor Neubau, meaning Grosstraktor new construction. It wouldn't be until October 3rd, 1933, when the name we all recognize would finally be attached to the tank, that being Neubaufahrzeug, meaning new construction vehicle. This would not actually be the final name it received, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. With the design of the vehicle wrapping up, production contracts for soft steel prototypes were issued. Rheinmetall was to build two chassis and a single turret, with Krupp building the turret for the second hull. The first of these was assembled with the Rheinmetall hull and turret in 1934, with the second hull receiving its turret the following year. Although both turrets housed the same armaments, they did have a few differences. Before we get into the turrets though, let's take a slight tangent and discuss the armaments in question. The primary armament of the tank would be the same size as the previous Grosstraktor, known as the 7.5cm KWK L24, along with a smaller 3.7cm KWK L45. At first, you may assume the larger gun was intended for an anti-tank role, with the smaller gun being used more like a coaxial machine gun for other targets. In reality though, unlike some later vehicles which mounted a smaller coaxial gun, it is the other way around. As we see with the Panzer III and Panzer IV, the 37mm, although not capable of large HE payloads, was superior against armor due to its higher velocity. This is why the Panzer III was originally to engage tanks, whereas the Panzer IV would support infantry. With it mounting both, the Neubaufahrzeug could theoretically perform both roles. Back to the design of the turrets, the Rheinmetall one shown here was rounded with the 37mm mounted above the 75. We can also see in several pictures that it had handles added to the turret. The Krupp one, on the other hand, was a more angular design with the guns mounted side by side. The two smaller turrets mounted in front and behind the main turret each contained a single machine gun. Initially, these seemed to be similar in shape to the Rheinmetall main turret, but were later redesigned, which gave them an appearance similar to the Panzer I turret. Each of the smaller turrets would be manned by a gunner, with the primary turret being manned by a crew of 3. None of the sources I could find detail the precise roles of these three, but we can safely assume that they fulfilled the role of gunner, loader, and commander, as the two primary guns used the same elevation controls, meaning two gunners controlling them would cause nothing but confusion. Some sources name the vehicle with the Rheinmetall turret as the Ausführung A, with the Krupp turret being the Ausführung B. However, I am unsure if this was an official German designation or one made up post-war. Regardless, the Krupp turret was preferred over the Rheinmetall one, with the remaining tanks receiving them. Production would continue in 1935 with 3 more hulls ordered in the spring. Unlike the previous ones, these would now be made with armor plate. These 3 would finally be completed in 1936 and featured the redesigned smaller turrets. With such a large vehicle, you may expect it to have equally thick armor, but in reality, the strongest armor on the tank was only 20mm thick. This may seem extremely weak, but keep in mind that at this period, anti-tank guns were considerably less powerful. Another factor to consider is that on such a large vehicle, making a plate even a few millimeters thicker quickly adds weight to an already overweight machine. Remember how I mentioned the initial weight requirement was 16 tons and then 18 tons? Well, the production vehicles were well past 23 tons when fully loaded. The addition of more weight would add protection, but likely at a further cost to mobility. Although you may think that the rest of this story is similar to the Großtraktor, you would be wrong. Throughout the following years, the Neubaufahrzeug would indeed be used for training, with the prototypes being used in exercises in 1935 alongside their older cousins, as well as 3 armored vehicles serving at Putlaus to train gunnery. Unlike the Großtraktor though, this would be followed not by service as monuments, but rather service on the front lines. Before we discuss their active service though, I do need to provide a disclaimer. Information regarding the development is well detailed in Panzertrax No. 4, which I have so far been using primarily as my source, but it unfortunately does not go into much detail about the combat usage. With the fairly sparse information about that portion of its story, some of the details I am about to discuss may not be entirely accurate. The 3 armored vehicles would be mobilized in April of 1940 in a platoon and sent to support the invasion of Norway. Around this time, they received their final redesignation, now being called the Neubau Panzerkampfwagen 4. According to an article written by Mike Benningoff, this was due to the loss of 19 tanks from the 40th Special Purpose Tank Detachment. How much combat they would see is unclear, but we know for certain they were used, as one was damaged in combat. Both the site Achtung Panzer and the previously mentioned article report this as being due to a British 25mm anti-tank gun. Although the British did not have a 25mm gun of their own, this was likely a French Hotchkiss gun. That vehicle was only temporarily disabled, being recovered later. However, another was eventually lost due to becoming stuck in a swampy area. Due to this, it was destroyed by the Germans. The remaining 2 vehicles survived the invasion and returned to Germany at the end of the year. Some sources both claim one of the prototype vehicles was sent to replace the lost vehicle in Norway, and that the 2 which survived were left in Norway following the victory. These do not list any sources though, and directly contradict the information provided by Hilary Doyle and Peter Chamberlain, so I don't entirely trust that, especially considering the fact Neubaufahrzeug are said to have been used on the Eastern Front. Speaking of their potential service on the Eastern Front, that is another can of worms entirely. To put it bluntly, without anything to back up the claims made by various sites, I really don't feel like I have enough information to confidently discuss that potential usage in detail. They may have seen some service in the early invasion of the Soviet Union, with claims that German sources placed them in various locations across the front, but seem to all agree that regardless of the location, they were eventually taken out of action. None of the tanks would survive the war, being cut up for scrap. The only remnant of them today is a part of a suspension located in Norway. Probably the most interesting thing about the Neubaufahrzeug story is something you may have missed. Often, this tank is described as a heavy tank. However, as we saw today, this was not actually the case, and from the start, it was intended as a medium. I presume this was caused due to Allied reporting that the vehicle was a heavy tank, as I alluded to in the previous video. Unfortunately for the Neubaufahrzeug, one of the very companies responsible for its creation were also the cause of its demise, as the Krupp Begleitwagen, which eventually became the basis for the Panzer IV, would fulfill the same role. Rather than a complex, multi-turreted vehicle which required a 6-man crew, the simpler and lighter Panzer IV could provide roughly the same firepower, faster, and with nearly the same armor protection. Clearly, Germany made the correct choice as the Panzer IV became one of the best and most plentiful vehicles they would produce throughout the war, being upgraded repeatedly as new threats emerged. As we have seen in other videos in this series, multi-turreted tanks are a concept doomed to failure. Although they do add additional firepower to a vehicle, they also add complexity, cost, and weight. You also need to store more ammo and crew, all of which either require a larger vehicle or reduce the internal space for the crew to operate. This was only one of the issues with the Neubau-Fahrzeug's design though, as it was really just a crude attempt at the same concept that the Panzer IV would perfect. So, did you learn something new in this video? If you did, let me know in the comments down below. I'd also like to thank Hilary Doyle and Thomas Jentz who created the Panzertrax books, as without the edition which included information on this tank, I probably would not have been able to cover it in nearly this level of detail. I wish I could tell you to go out and buy it, but not only is that edition out of print, but according to their website, they will be closing down at the end of 2022. However, if you would like to order the last printing of their book covering the Panzer III development and service, I will link that below. I'm not sure if they are still accepting orders at this point, but I sadly did not learn about this until recently. If you're watching this after the end of 2022, don't worry though, as you can still find these books commonly on third-party sellers such as Amazon or used copies on eBay. I don't get any sort of kickback from you buying these, I just think they are some of the best sources for information out there on German armor. If you do want to support my channel when purchasing tank books through Amazon though, you can do so by using my Amazon links in all my video descriptions. I earn a small commission on any purchase you make after clicking them, so if you're doing last-minute gift shopping or even normal purchases, you can help support my content at no cost to you. Anyways, that's enough of me advertising books to you. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated, or if you feel exceptionally generous, you can leave a super thanks comment or become a channel member like these amazing people. The year is coming to a close, so only a few more uploads until 2023, but I'm going to try to pack in as much as I can, so stay tuned and I hope to see you on those future uploads.